Hi, I'm Rob. In my first video, I described how my current training regime consisted of an easy run every day. This is developing my base fitness, building strength in my legs, and improving my aerobic efficiency. I'll discuss more about aerobic efficiency later in the video. Doesn't matter how successful you are, as coaches and athletes, we're always learning. I read and watch content put out by a lot of different coaches, but today I want to concentrate on these three: Lydiard, Jack Daniels, and Friel Maffetone. I've read all three books from cover to cover, but as you can see, lots of bookmarks in there because I keep on coming back to these as reference. Some background on the three authors. Lydiard was an elite runner before becoming a very successful coach. Anyone who coaches an athlete to an Olympic medal is impressive, but to win 2 gold and 1 bronze in athletics is truly amazing, especially for a small nation like New Zealand. Being 60 years ago, some might regard his methods as too old, but I actually think that makes it more relevant because it was before the proliferation of drugs in sport. Jack Daniels had a very long period of success. I found his book the easiest to absorb, and the one I most use as reference. If I was only allowed to keep one of the three books, I would keep the Daniels one. Friel Maffetone was a bit different from the other two. His qualifications are as a chiropractor. He would claim to take a more holistic view. He really championed the use of heart rate monitors in the mid-80s and also put huge emphasis on an athlete's diet and how that affected endurance performance. Lydiard and Daniels are more widely accepted as great coaches, whereas Maffetone tends to get divided opinions. I didn't want to breach any copyright by showing actual training plans from the book, but here's a rough guide of how much base training of easy running they all prescribed. I've used quality to describe the phases of training that include intensity, such as threshold runs, track workouts, hill repeats. Daniel prescribes the smallest spaced period, but he still wants 6 weeks and up to 3 months of easy running. So while all three coaches are different, they all agree on needing a decent base before you start adding intensity. Coincidentally, I came across the following on Twitter this morning. For those who aren't familiar, Joe Friel is a running and triathlon coach who was a driving force behind the creation of the Training Peaks software. Alan Couzens is a very successful and well-respected coach. If you weren't a convert already, hopefully I'm winning you over to the benefits of base training. I've spoken about getting strength in the legs, but one of the other benefits of base training is improving your aerobic efficiency. Very simply, when you're running in the aerobic zone, you're burning about 80% fat, 20% carbs. Even someone as skinny as me has a huge reserve of fat, but we all have very limited stores of carbs. The more fat you're burning, the longer you can go. When you move into burning more carbs, that needs to be replenished with food like gels or energy bars. But there's a limit to how quickly your stomach can digest that food, and the quicker you're going, the less your stomach can do. The more you exercise in the aerobic zone, the more efficient your body becomes at burning fat. The result of this is for the same heart rate, your pace should improve over time as your body simply becomes more efficient. My experience with myself and athletes I coach is you get the best results for this aerobic efficiency improvement if you're running at least 5 times a week. It seems like it needs that volume to really get the results. Now finally we're getting towards the point of the video. I've been running 7 days a week for the last 10 weeks. All of my runs have been easy, but I haven't seen much, if any, improvement in my run speed for the same heart rate. Admittedly, I haven't been watching my heart rate during the runs, but they've all been pretty close to that aerobic heart rate. While the lack of discipline in running to a specific HR may be an issue, I have another theory. In the past, I've used this method very successfully with triathletes, but on top of the 5 runs a week, they've also been swimming and riding. Even when I was coaching people for marathons, they were still doing cycling and swimming as cross-training. I mentioned earlier that one of the biggest factors in the effectiveness of this method was the volume of training. If we look from graphs from my Strava and Training Peaks account, we can see how much of my overall training load has actually reduced over the last 10 weeks. Graph from Strava showing the number of hours per week for the last 12 months. There are 3 distinct training blocks. The first section, I was training for a half Ironman triathlon in early September. The graph only shows the last 12 months, so it's not showing the start of that program. The race was overseas, so my wife Allan and I had a break where we travelled for a couple of weeks, hence no training there. This second block, we were training for a local half Ironman triathlon in February. After the race, it was just when the pandemic was starting, so I wasn't really sure what I was doing. It wasn't until this section you see at the end here, this last 10 weeks, that I jumped into a pure run focus. From this graph, you can tell that my training over the last 10 weeks is far less than the training when I'm training for a triathlon. In fact, when training for a triathlon, I don't really consider myself in full training unless I'm doing at least 10 hours per week. A big week is anything over 15 hours. So from the top, you can see here, my last training week was 68.2 kilometers, which is 42 miles, and it was 6 hours and 25 minutes. So to actually crack even 10 hours would be well over 100 kilometers per week, which I just can't see happening. Training Peaks, looking at the same data over the last 12 months. This is the performance management chart, but I've isolated the run training. So the chart is ignoring any activities that are not marked as a run. I'll discuss the yellow and magenta lines in a different video. For this example, we are only interested in the blue shaded line. This blue line represents fitness. So in this case, run fitness. You can see that I had more of a run focus for the September race than I did for the race in February. You can also see that my current run focus is significantly more than both the September and February race preparations. So according to the chart, my run fitness should be at its highest point for the last 12 months. By cutting back my training to just running, my training hours have dramatically reduced, and I'm not getting the aerobic efficiencies I was expecting. While this is a little disappointing, I'm not about to change my training just yet. My primary focus was still to build strength in the legs and improve my long distance running, and so far that's going pretty well. With no races on the horizon, I'm not in any hurry. There'll be plenty of time to work on my aerobic efficiency when I decide to reintroduce the cycling and the swimming. At the moment, I'm really enjoying training less. I'm not missing the early nights to bed, the early mornings out of bed. I'm basically having a mental break while still improving my long distance running. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.